I think I'm on tap to introduce the next speakers as well. And I believe it's a team. I think Katharina and Arie are going to be tag teaming their presentation. And so I'm going to introduce Katharina, and then in the appropriate moment, she can introduce, I believe, her colleague, and they'll sort of tag team this. But welcome, Katharina. It's great to have you back among United States monetary reformers. You presented already this summer at our Just Money Festival. But Katharina is a German-speaking European, Germany-based, Switzerland-based, other places based, I think sometimes, and a social entrepreneur. And she's really rooted in grassroots context and the connection between money and people within communities and more than people, the beings among us that are non-human, so all of nature. And so she's devoted her work over her career in many different ways to that. And so without further ado, other than giving you all the title that they will address, really focused on the local context, is Beyond Chicago Plan, CDC, Blockchain, and UBI, Universal Basic Income, a resource-based monetary ecosystem of the commons. So thank you for unpacking that for us, Katharina and Arie.
Thank you very much, Lucille and everyone. It's wonderful to being here. Yeah, so actually I've been working, and Arie and myself are working together on this triangle, actually, that was introduced very beautifully, on nature, money, and community, because I came to believe that if we are to exist as a species a little bit longer, I think it makes sense that we look at that triangle a bit deeper. Maybe I just say a few words about myself, how I came there, and I don't know, Arie, if you would like to say the same, and then we go into the content of our observations, because we have been working on that together. So I will present in the beginning a little bit of our observations, which some of the items were actually already from some of the speakers before touched on. And then we go and really look at some of the more pilots and really local experiences. Yes, I'm a natural scientist, so I'm not a monetary expert by training, or let's say by university background, but rather a natural scientist. And I realized very quickly after university, when I was working in my first consultancy job, actually developing huge land projects, that something was not quite right. That actually the bigger our success was, or the bigger these projects were, and working for the World Bank and big agro corporates and energy companies, that there was something which was not really matching into what I learned how ecosystems work, and what I felt that these communities that are living there, that it sort of made sense. So, and that thing that I didn't understand turned out to be money. So that's what I've been researching since then. And doing that in very different positions, both in banking and sustainable banking, in really as an environmentalist. So I was very familiar from the beginning with that whole climate debate, and actually we did some lobbying of working with many different financial institutions, but also engaging with central banks around the world to understand how this question of the environment, of resources, of actually how do we integrate what we know about how life works and how nature works into what we have designed as economic models and money. And we were actually quite successful. But I realized that whenever we have that reductionist approach, for example, in carbon credits, that this is not the entire story. So I was learning from my work in the real world of the needs that there are in order for farmers to really transition to regeneration, to build up new soil, which is desperately needed, or to build up vegetation and to build up new economic resilient structures that allow them to do that are more in network structures and less in these globalized agro-commodity chains, value chains, so-called value chains. There's much more to it, and money and the way we define money plays a huge role. So I've been working on that also as I was based in Switzerland, and I am still, or again, on the sovereign money reform here in Switzerland. So I was quite active at that time. But I realized that, there are some learnings, and it's very useful also when it comes to, we heard that term a few times, democratizing money and also the discussion on money. I realized at the time how desperately it is needed that we have many, and we allowed to have many different voices and perspectives on the same thing. And I'm very happy that we are allowed here, and we are bringing in different voices into this Congress here. And within that sovereign, or after that sovereign money referendum, or this initiative in Switzerland, which was mentioned by another lecturer before today, it was said it was not so clear cut that this gets democratic support. Well, yeah, with 25% at least at that point voted for a yes, which I personally found to be quite an interesting, and quite actually it had some movement and had some influence on the way the whole question, and the key question that would put on this during this reform, which was basically asking the pure question, who should be responsible for defining what money is? And this had an influence that everyone has the right to vote in Switzerland at least once was confronted with this question. And since then, I've been working really on regenerative projects and as an entrepreneur, looking always back to the money reform questions and asking myself, if I look at the different suggestions, what can we observe? And what can we co-create that really works for those kind of initiatives that we want to see in the world? Last years, I've been working with farmers in southern Portugal, for example, on regenerating the soil and bringing in agroecological experts, and with the whole village, with all the different stakeholder groups, and primarily also led by women, to bring in the change in an entire region that is affected by desertification. Those of you that are living in the US, in California, you may have the similar challenges in terms of drought and these kind of things, but also in every rural areas where people, don't have perspectives, and the youth is unemployed, and all of these questions. So we have been working on a holistic project, and from these experiences, then looking back, and what is it actually that we need? And I came to believe that what we need is not a monoculture, as well in agriculture, but also in the way we design a monetary ecosystem. So I will begin sharing a few of our observations that Arie and myself have been working on. Unless, Arie, you would like to introduce yourself first?
No, I think you go ahead, and then
Perfect.
I will relate to it further.
Wonderful. So can you see it? So hopefully.
Yes, yes.
Wonderful. So we have named this our presentation, or what we are going to discuss with you, that we would like to look from really the local perspective, or let's say the entrepreneurial and really the community-based perspective, back to these suggestions. And we called it Beyond the Chicago Plan, Beyond CBDC, Blockchain, and UBI, towards something which we call a resource-based monetary ecosystem of the commons, because I believe that only when we put people and the commons in the center, and then ask the question, what is it actually that we need? That's going to guide us there. And maybe just a few observations, and some of them were shared already today, and some of them were really observations or thoughts that I and we came to just also over the years, given the current environment that we're living in now. If we look at the Chicago plan, for example, that, it was, I think, more than 80 years ago, it was actually 1933 that this was submitted, right? And it was at the time, it didn't went through. But however, a very similar approach was then implemented in a situation in Germany, in Nazi Germany, where some of or similar instruments turned out to be effective. But what is very, very clear, and I think this is relevant for today and the discussion, and some of the previous speakers have pointed to that, it always depends for what kind of values and from what kind of power structures are any of these instruments being used. So in a way, if we look at it, the Chicago Plan was designed for sovereign countries that are intending to foster the common good for its people and the natural resources. And if we look at the world as it is today, we find ourselves in a world where, the richest people and the largest corporations have gained a lot of influence and power over the life of people. We heard about that earlier today. And also increasingly control over media and governments. And therefore we said, well, if it could be an intention for today to come up with something like a new or a 2021 Chicago plan, we would need to find very new and creative ways to really regain this sovereignty of people. And also there we heard about sovereignty today. To create a monetary system that really serves people and the commons. So because we can find that those suggestions that were made nearly 100 years ago were really under the assumption, or they would work under the assumption that we would have this kind of value-based government or institutions executing on these responsibilities. And also we had some wonderful lectures, and I would just add on that, the same is with the central bank digital currencies, that, with the whole emergence of the blockchain technology that has inspired many of us and many of the supporters of monetary reform, that this could be a way. And we are seeing this now, that really leading figures of the movement have joined central banks, and for example, in England, and there are others. We heard about other experiments that are starting, and we heard also from Josef Huber that this is very likely that this is going to have a remarkable influence. And these experiments, they need to be seen where they are leading. Also there, our question is, would this instrument be designed and executed in a way that it supports the commons, and or is it yet another instrument of more control and even more destruction? So this is the other question. And then the blockchain as a technology, again, it's an emerging technology that inspired many and created like a wave of fintech innovation and enabled very many decentralized instruments that provide the infrastructure for this peer-to-peer transactions and transparency without having this middleman in the middle or a middle entity that is controlling. And this is for sure on the positive side. And within a few years, we could see that this technology also was discovered by regulators and by certain private corporations to turn the transparency actually at the same time into I would say, a trap of control, where the existing decentralized corporate government power structures have been even more used to control and use this information about us, basically. So whenever it is about, designing the solutions of the future, we need to consider what is actually happening and need to answer collectively what serves the people and the commons. And just before we go into the experiences of how we could actually, or maybe you will ask then, okay, but where do you see a solution? And we will go into that. But maybe just another reflection is similar, is one on the universal basic income, which is in a way also a wonderful approach and idea. And I was myself also very supportive of it, and in the previous initiative in Switzerland, as it helps actually from the idea to have like an unconditional basic income for every human being in the world, that would enable to overcome debt and poverty and bring prosperity, especially there where really scarcity is, right? And there are many interesting and potentially freeing aspects from people that are otherwise not able to really live in dignity. However, you know, it is still using the same utility and service provider, so it's not, if not added with another more creative way of bringing the monetary ecosystem into being, this will still lead to spending the money basically on the same things and the same corporates and the same ways that actually threaten us, the society and the resources, and that will not continue to ensure, or will not ensure that we are actually that there will be a huge shift. So basically these observations paved the ground for then some new and creative forms of an ecosystem. And I would love Arie to continue from here and to maybe share first what brought you as an entrepreneur, what brought you into this monetary things, and then we go into really the solutions.
Thank you. I would start from the end. One day I'm going to join many others that preceded me and will leave my body behind. When I observed people who have done it already, I noticed that the shroud of death have no pockets. There's nothing we can take with us of material value. But from my inner spiritual experiences, I came to recognize that actually there's one thing that we do take with us. That is the relationship. Let's call it our karma. So when I looked at life and when I observed my life and the life of others, I think if we put the relationship and the quality of the relationship at the center of any question and activity and system, be it the monetary system, be it the other system related to nature, when we put the relationship between people and the relationship to nature, this is an amazing foundation, and that also guided me to focus on things. So just a few notes of my background. I was an activist quite at an early age. When I was 5, I already set the pigeons and the rabbits free in the children's zoo in the kibbutz where I was born. You can imagine what a scandal it was. But you know what? They came back after a few hours. And I think one of the problems that Olaf also related to is the question of the ability of people to think in a free and sovereign way. Many people actually enjoy hearing from the television what they're supposed to think. Anyway, I went on, I was a basketball player on the Israeli team, and then I was at the Israeli Mission Impossible unit, and where I worked with children in education, first kindergarten, and then kids that were kicked out of school with some small criminal things, stealing cars and doing drugs. So I did some survival trips with them in the woods, and why do you steal cars? And then, oh, we love it. I said, let's build cars. So together with others, we built, with a mechanic, we built 4 cars and went wild without license in the woods. So that was the first chapter. And then I went and studied art and Waldorf education, Steiner education. And then I started a career as an artist with many art exhibitions, my artwork and collection, and also initiated a Waldorf academic teacher training. So what brought me to money was actually the question, why do they always say there's no money? Money is something that people create. It's not like water that is scarce in the desert. And being an entrepreneur in the social educational field, I couldn't understand that. And being born in a kibbutz, something I couldn't make sense of it. So I decided as a hobby, I will make money and then become a Trojan horse in the system. So that's what I did. I won't go into it, but I initiated all sorts of business projects, anything from building homes in the ski resort in Colorado to air cargo in the Caribbean and other projects. And the idea was first make money in a conventional way and then do it, work from within the system. So then we created a whole fund for sustainable things and did supported organic drinks and renewable energy. But my conclusion was that the world needs a new operating system, and that's what led me to initiate what now we call Share It. And also I initiated the Israeli monetary change movement, became a very good friend of Bernard Liatar. He visited us in Israel, and we also related to the importance of any monetary system to start being designed from the relationship. So in a way, what we are creating and created is a good karma app, something that you can exchange resources and the money will support it. So money supports the people rather than the people being servants of the economy. So we call it resource-based economy. And basically what it is there, we are seeing it as an ecosystem of capacities that are already there. But the idea and the practice, and I will tell you a little bit of already executed projects that are quite encouraging. The idea was to start from the resources. So for example, the largest shop in the world is the homes of the people. And if you think about 1 million people, how many things they have, jewelries and clothes and you name it, that are in an excellent condition, toys, etc., it's phenomenal. And then it doesn't even cost to store it because the storage in the home of the people. So we started with women. That was a great idea because women are carrying a lot of the burden of the house often. They're aware of the community, the task at home, etc. still in our time. And we started with 60, they invited their friend to 500, then to 5,000. And basically, we started a pilot in which people can upload things they are having in their homes and exchange. So with no cost of the items and no cost of the storage, the delivery was the issue, but together with these women and serving their ideas, we created a whole delivery system where actually it is done in our marketplace with the currency that we created. So think about a marketplace and an app very well created, and people can upload anything they don't need anymore, and they can buy and sell. There are no debts. So when you join in, you get some currency. When you upload things, you get currency because you enlarge the economy. 72% of all the items that are uploaded are sold actually. People are spending half an hour a day, the active users. They're saving $200 and more in a month, even at this stage. We have over 50,000 registered people in Israel. Now we opened it to the public. So we see there's a real need, and the ability to do shopping without money enlarges the wallet of the family. And more than that, people become free because they don't feel it is so crucial. If they sold something, then they bought it. It's not like affecting the ability to pay for the education of the children or pay for their food. And as it is developing, we see it becomes very significant. Also, we already had over 130,000 items being sold. So you see a community creating its own resources and creating the currency, and then delivery. In the delivery system they created, Every person writes the places he goes to the school, to their home, to their work, and maybe to the grandparents. And then even 100 people created over 400 different routes that are covering now all over Israel. And in the time of the corona, there was quite a challenge for volunteering. So we created another component of this resource-based economy, volunteering. So every person can put up everything he needs. Every person can put up everything he can help with. And it's a direct thing. Again, no one in the middle. In cities, there are thousands of volunteers, but usually there's something in the center that is directing them. So it is very efficient and also had shown to be very needed in time of great crisis, when there's a flood or when there's a snow that in Jerusalem people don't know how to cope with, then the conventional systems are collapsing, and here the peer-to-peer is working. Then another problem, the NGOs were not getting enough support of money, but they had 2 or 3 times more work to help different people. So again, the same principle, and that's important. Once we understand the principle, we can apply it in many different ways. So what we did, we had hotels and restaurants and companies uploading equipment and things they're having. We're talking about millions of shekels of value that suddenly we have a marketplace full of that, and no one paid a shekel for that. And then we gave NGOs, we gave them a budget, so you can call it a NGO's basic income, that every month they get, like if it's a big NGO, they get $5,000 or $6,000. If it's a small one, $2,000, and they're just doing shopping, even to the extent that they are, Zara or Golf or other companies are having extra capacities with the clothes that they didn't sell, and then they send it and we distribute to disadvantaged communities, etc. So that's another way. There's the whole way of rentals and exchanging. There's the realm of businesses with their inventories and extra capacities. There's the food forest. So when we look at all of these different things, we see that there's actually a trillions of dollars of capacity that has not been used, which has a great impact on the environment. Because when you're exchanging one book, like The Little Prince, is going in a year 5 times between different families. And it's enough to have a little bit of money, maybe 3,000 points, to be continuously using it again and again because of the velocity, because 70% or more of the items are moving. So actually, it's not just its book already being bought, but now it is serving the community without extra cost, and the same with the money. We need a lot of money when Walmart comes to town, all the small businesses are hurt, and then all the money is going to Arkansas, but the community is left empty. But if there's activity in the community and the money is flowing, then you need much less money. So if you look at that as a whole, when we start from resources and capacities, then a whole new innovation is possible, and that's what we've been working with other people. But because now the whole internet is also controlled by large companies and organizations, we're now integrating our platform with another group called Threefold that together they created a whole infrastructure for internet that is decentralized. So there are no servers, no one can break into it, no one can control your data. The internet is also built on information that the people own their own information, and they can exchange it, and they can do also their commercial relationship. And so with this, we also believe that UBI is limited in what it can offer, because it's still, like Katharina pointed out, it still works in the way that even if you found the money, but it's not very sustainable, because you need to continuously put more and more money into the system, and the money goes to continuously paying the electricity for polluting companies and so on. So I would like just to share with you for the end the model of the Kabubi, and then we can have a little time just to look at it. So the Kabubi, again, it's called for Community Asset-Based UBI. In Swahili, it's a celebration, I found out afterwards. So if you just take the typical kind of $1 million donated in America, in New York, by the time it passes the Statue of Liberty, his hand is very high, $500,000 were left in New York for parties and donors, events, and so on. And then by the time it got to Kenya, for example, it is maybe $200,000 with the president and the mayors and who knows what. And very soon afterward, there's $50,000 left, which is a very small budget to take photos of a few happy Kenyan women dancing while they're working so they can be sent back to America to get another $1 million. So we are looking at it just the other way around. We say if we got $1 million, it goes, first of all, into a social bank that can turn it, according to the traditional banking, to $10 million. And that $10 million buys assets for the community. It can buy solar energy, water system, irrigation, also healthcare, housing, infrastructure. So it immediately goes to something that creates value in the real economy. And then the people would be able to use that, and then they will get a cheaper solar energy. So they will have more electricity for lower prices compared with the polluting energy that the big company is serving them. Now, the innovation here from the currency point of view, that we also create a local currency. Let's call it good coin. And the good coin is the only way that you can actually buy this or get these community assets. So you can get the discount in the energy, you can get the discount in the water supply or other things by using the good coin that we created as a currency by the people for the people. So this, and people will pay a small membership with the local currency. And then when you go to the market and you ask the person, when you buy banana or mango, should I pay with good coin or with shillings? Of course, he will say with good coin, because that's how I get the good, healthy, discounted energy, etc. So I just gave a few examples of something which is much greater than that. The bottom line from all what we've been looking at is that at the moment, I already said it a year ago, I think we are actually in a third world war, the world war. The only reason people don't quite perceive it this way, because it is confusing. In normal wars in the past, the enemies were two countries that were fighting with one another with tanks and airplanes or gas and who knows what. And now, the way it is, France is much weaker than Google, and England is much weaker than Facebook or the pharmaceutical, Pfizer, and these big companies. There is no comparison of the power. And when all of these organizations and companies are collaborating with the information and with the activities, and they're, like Katharina mentioned, the media and the governments are now very dominated by these lobbyists and these power companies, then the war is actually between those organizations that are using the people for their needs or whatever, and the people who are trying to protect their sovereignty. And Olaf described these things so beautifully that we really need to see. Are we able to protect our rights to think differently, to handle our body in a different way, to create other forms of money? But the clue for a healthy monetary system is the variety. The government could create the CBDC for the purpose of the infrastructure and the well-being of the people that they are responsible. And cities should be doing it for their cities, and entrepreneurs should be doing it for other purposes. So by having that, then we don't create a situation of very centralized and one-sided system that can very easily be controlled by those who don't necessarily promote the same values. So this is sort of a little bit of just bullets, and please feel free to ask us both questions or to make comments.
Thank you very much, Katharina and Arie. Very interesting. Even before the first AMI conference, I went to the local currencies in the 21st century conference where Bernard and other local currency folks presented. And if I understood at the end, you were saying it's a monetary ecosystem that includes a national central bank digital currency mechanism somehow for international exchange or not. I'm not sure about that part, but then a plethora of local currencies of the model that you described, but that are created locally. Is that basically what you're advocating?
Yes, and it's actually more than just advocating in a theoretical way, but as Arie was describing, it already exists, and it's like a monetary experiment, or let's say a pilot case, which is ongoing and has now more than 50,000 users and a very, very good traction. So it's happening as we speak, and that's also this kind of entrepreneurial approach of just doing it is something which I find there is a creative space which is happening.
Yes, I just add that the creation of money is a form of empowering relationship of different kind, and it should be democratized. Every person in the world, every institution, every organization should be allowed by law to create its currency. And the idea that you shouldn't do it because you're competing with this, it's not an issue, it's just a story that they're telling. You can pay the taxes that you need to pay, and I would say more than that. A day will come that if I made my money with the local currency in Tel Aviv, I should be able to pay with that local currency, and they can use some of the values that I created. And if they created the money for the taxes of the infrastructure, although we see that with the Chicago plan, if it is applied appropriately, very little taxes will actually be needed. So cryptocurrencies as well. I mean, there are big problems with the cryptocurrencies because of the confusion of two kinds of currencies. If amazing creation of the Bitcoin was made and someone bought with 20,000 Bitcoins, one pizza, 10 years later, one Bitcoin buys 20,000 pizzas. So the behavior of that particular instrument is something that they believed it will grow in value, and those who kept that Bitcoin, it grew in the value. This is an investment instrument and can be also speculated. What we need in a local currency is something completely different. It behaves completely different. It needs to have velocity. It needs to have an operating way. It needs to be one. It can't go 80% down and up like the crypto markets or something like this. 1 shekel is 1 point. It's simple for the people, and you can't use it out of the system unless you create something. So the operating system is different, and their velocity is important. So if we need, we create a demurrage. At the moment, it works so well that we don't even need it. But demurrage is reducing, encouraging you to use even more because you don't want just to have your money going into the social fund or something. So it's like a human being. We have our head, which is functioning a little bit like this investment thing. We have our limbs that can work and act in the world, and we have our heart. And I loved what Olaf also mentioned, and I would add to it. Many people, particularly in the academic world, think that their body and their heart and their heads is just something to carry their head from one place to another. And in a certain way, if we can understand that the future of our life is where we realize what a place our heart and heads have, and we allow all of this to stream, then something amazing can happen, because no one has one solution, but together there are amazing possibilities.
Sam, you have a question? Or?
Yes.
We'll have to wrap it up then.
Sure. I would love to know how your system has handled government and tax law in the United States. I have a friend in the early 2000s who created a very similar system, got over 10,000 users, and then got shut down by the IRS in our country because they either were going to be forced to start collecting dollars for tax payments on behalf of everyone using the platform, or they were going to have to start turning over data to the IRS, itemized, individualized data about their transactions so the IRS could go after them for taxes on their sales and the income of their sales. Have you had a problem with a similar type of situation there where
we addressed it in the way we structured it, this way we called points and giving, and you know, you give things or you ask for things, and also when it's second-hand items where we started, it's less of a challenge than with services, and these are items that already were bought and paid for taxes. And so there are different ways of handling it. But the bottom line is that where you will have to pay taxes, you need to create the mechanism that is showing and why and in what form you're paying the taxes. Because part of this can be related to even when we do a mutual payment that people get discount for businesses, for example. So you can pay with points 30%. You can argue that this is a promotion and something that you just give a discount. I don't want to go into it in this context more, but I would be happy sometime to explore it with you. And yeah.
So I think I got a warning from Steve a bit that we should end. I think Steve had one question that was in the chat that he wanted to ask from Mike Holden. Stephen, do you have that?
Do you have the Mike Holden question?
It's a question
Stephen?
by Mike Holden.
Yes, here we go.
But I have to find it again in my chat.
Okay, well, I thought it was right there.
Here we go. Does the resource-based economy you describe have any relation to Jacques Fresco's Venus project and resource-based economy? In case you're familiar with Jacques Fresco's Venus project.
It has nothing to do with it. And in fact, I mean, I wouldn't say that. I mean, he had some ideas that are very legitimate. Unfortunately, it's packed with many other mystical things and whatever. So, and also something that I'm far from believing the same. We created it quite spontaneously, and then we noticed that he had it. So we actually have we're making a bid now for someone that can find a better name that will describe the same thing.
Okay, unless Katharina has a final word, I'm going to turn it.
Yes.
I'm going to thank both of you and turn it over to Stephen. But did you?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Stephen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katharina. Thank you, Arie.
Thank you.
Beautifully done, and we're graced with your presence, both of you. Thank you very much. If this video is helpful, please hit the like button, subscribe for new video notifications. Please consider donating at monetary.org/donate. Don't forget to check us out on Twitter at AMI Monetary or on our website